The entomologist's soul pierces through the world of cultivation and attaches itself to a small scattered cultivator who cultivates insects. He, who has lived a lifetime of hard work, only wants to stay away from conflicts and live a lewd life in the mortal village. Observing the Sun and Moon Heart Classic, I have a feeling in Created my own 10 Jue Jing. I have a feeling for watching 9 Death Divine Skill and Created my own Purgatory True Demon Skill. Observing the Eternal Life Sutra and deducing the last 100 layers of the Eternal Life Sutra. Brainstorming goes against the sky, understanding goes against the sky, and with unlimited time, one can create their own techniques, elixirs, tools, formations, goo formulas, poison formulas, wine formulas. Others cultivate the path of slaughter, while he cultivates his own path. This book is also known as Self-Created Flowing Immortal Cultivation, Brainstorming Against the Sky. I created the invincible law in the mortal village, sorry. I only know the unique immortal law. Chapter 1. Self-Created Jixifang at the beginning. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. In the endless darkness, Long Xian woke up from his dream. Where is this? He looked around in confusion, his eyebrows furrowed. What appeared in sight was a messy bedroom, with a musty smell in the air. As his gaze swept towards a copper mirror on the table, a handsome 15 or 16-year-old boy appeared in his sight. He quickly realized that he had traveled, and then a large amount of unfamiliar memories flooded into his mind, further confirming his speculation. This is a strange world similar to the cultivation world, with pills, weapons, formations, talismans, beasts, insects, swords, puppets, and the youth is a goo cultivator who cultivates insect repellent skills, living in a region full of goo cultivators. The people in this region obtain powerful power by raising and refining goo. The so-called goo refers to placing different types of spiritual insects in containers, causing them to kill each other. Over time, there is a probability that even more powerful new insect species will emerge. The new species of insects born in this way are called goo insects, which cannot reproduce and can only be obtained through refining goo. According to the different types and quantities of spirit insects in the vessels, there are countless ways to combine spirit insects. Different combinations will give birth to different goo insects, with varying forms, varying strengths and weaknesses, and diverse abilities. But it can be roughly divided into 2 categories, one with a larger volume used for external combat, called external goo. A type of small size that can parasitize within goo shio's body, grow with the nutrients of goo shio's body, and feed back on goo shio's various magical abilities, giving goo shio the ability to spit fire and summon thunder. This type of goo insect is called an internal goo. Some internal goo are harmful and useless to goo cultivation, so they can be thrown into the enemy's food. Due to their small size, they are difficult to detect and cannot be prevented. Those who are infected with goo will often be eaten of their internal organs and killed by the internal goo. It is worth mentioning that many combination methods cannot produce goo, and there are even fewer combination methods that can produce powerful goo species. Goo shio recorded on paper the combinations of goo that could be refined, and thus became a permanent goo formula. Jixifang is the cornerstone of a family's enduring prosperity and the most important thing in a family. Every family regards it as a treasure and keeps it confidential. Therefore, it is very difficult for ordinary people to learn Jixifang. And the original owner was just an ordinary person from a poor family, working as a laborer in a medicine garden to earn a meager income, without any opportunity to learn Jixifang. The original protagonist, also known as Long Xian, has a humble identity. Since his parents died at a young age, he was born with a golden finger, which is a standard configuration for the protagonist. However, in the eyes of the original protagonist, this golden finger is relatively useless, so the protagonist has always been poor and has not become stronger due to the presence of golden fingers. Seeing this part of the memory, Long Xian couldn't help but frown. Can golden fingers still be useful? He had never heard of it before, and after reading countless novels, it was the first time he had heard of it. The protagonist's golden finger is either a system, or simply able to see the growth of all things. This is the only function, it can only be seen and cannot be changed. It is of no use except to visually see a number. At first glance, it doesn't seem very useful. Spiritual beasts and insects can determine their growth status based on their volume. There are also many ways for human spiritual medicines to identify the year, so it's really not necessary for them to do so. Long Xian showed a pensive expression. According to the description in memory, these were a pair of eyes that could see the growth of all things, which referred to all things in the world and were not limited to living beings. It seems that all living and dead things that can call nouns can see their growth degree. However, using growth rate on dead objects is not very vivid. Long Xian prefers to use a modern term, collectively referred to as progress, which is more vivid. The ability to see the progress of all things may seem useless to the original owner, but Long Xian doesn't think so. In his opinion, there is still a lot of room for development for this ability. The golden finger without waste only has a host of waste, it all depends on how strong the host's brain is. As a traveler, the most essential thing is his imagination, and soon many magical ideas appeared in his mind. He quickly got out of bed and walked to the table, took out a pen and paper from the drawer, quickly wrote the two big characters Gu Fang on the paper, and then wrote a material called Ghost Spider below. As expected, progress immediately appeared on paper, but it changed from a 1 to 20% representation to a numerical representation from a previous life. Obviously, the manifestation of the golden finger is mainly based on the host's cognition. At this moment, a string of 1.5% numbers appeared in his sight. Long Xian was lost in thought, and according to his conjecture, the residual formula was also considered a thing, so he could naturally see the progress. The progress of Gu Fang clearly represents the degree of incompleteness of Gu Fang. The more complete the Gu Fang, the higher its progress, while the more incomplete the Gu Fang, the lower its progress. However, only 1% of the incomplete Gu Fang is also called the incomplete Fang, and theoretically, the Gu Fang with only one material remaining is also called the incomplete Fang. So it's simple, how difficult is it to forge a leftover recipe with only one material left? He just needs to randomly create a blank square that can show the progress, and then continue to write down the materials he thinks are correct at the end. If the progress disappears, it means there is a mistake, wipe it off and replace it with a new material. If the progress increases, it means that you have made the right mistake and can continue to make progress. When he reaches 100%, it means he has successfully developed a Gu Fang. He had just intentionally written the insect species from his past life on paper, but he could also see the progress, which indicates that the criteria for determining the residual side of the golden finger include theoretical existence. That is to say, he can use this golden finger to create his own Gu Fang and create new Gu species that have not yet appeared in this world. There is no trial and error cost, and studying Gu Fang only relies on paper and pen. For him, creating Gu Fang is just a matter of how long his liver will last. Having a strong soul and understanding in both worlds, coupled with his previous identity as an entomologist, he boasted that he could use his knowledge and imagination in his previous life to develop extraordinary Gu Fang, which was enough to shine brightly in this world. At this moment, Long Xian was extremely excited and full of expectations for the future. After studying his golden finger for a while, he finally pushed open the door and walked towards the medicine garden that the original owner was responsible for. Refining Gu requires a considerable start-up capital, and this medicinal garden may become his first bucket of gold. Yao Yuan is a Gu Xiu with the surname Long, and outsiders call him Long Lao. Long Lao comes from a Gu Xiu family called the Long family and is ordered to stay in this village called Dashi village to defend it from the invasion of spiritual beasts and the plunder of Mo Xiu bandits. And what Dashi village needs to pay is more than half of the food, including meat and eggs. I don't know how many other villages are controlled by the Long family. In this world, Gu Xiu cannot cultivate land. This group only practices non-stop, does not engage in production, and is particularly capable of eating. The source of food can only come from ordinary villages of all sizes. The Gu Xiu family provides shelter for the mortal village, and the mortal provides food for the Gu Xiu family. The stronger the Gu Xiu family, the more mortal villages they control, and the wars between the Gu Xiu families also include the plunder of mortal villages. Dashi village is a large village with a population of up to 3,000, which has formed its current scale due to the presence of the only neighborhood in the far west. As it is closest to the Long family, it has become one of the sheltered villages it belongs to. Chapter 2. Longevity Sutra. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. For the next period of time, Long Xian stayed in the medicine garden, studying the optimal dosage and usage interval of the ripening solution for each type of spiritual medicine, and recording the research data on paper. There are over 100 types of spiritual medicines in the medicine garden, which is destined to be a long process. Fortunately, there is also a big white hen accompanying in the medicine garden, which is not boring. This big hen is used for pest control. Pesticides are needed for crops to produce pests, and the elixir can also produce pests. You need to buy insecticide powder from the Chamber of Commerce. Due to being released by the Dragon Elder, the original owner completely let himself go and wandered aimlessly in the medicine garden. He even saved the spirit stone he bought for exterminating insects and bought a big hen to come back. It can also be considered a mistake. The chickens raised in rural areas have the ability to eliminate pests for crops, which all villagers know, but that is limited to ordinary crops. The insects produced by spiritual medicine are not simple. In theory, when a hen eats spiritual insects, not only will it not digest them, but it will also be parasitized. But after a period of lethargy, this hen not only survived, but also evolved into a spirit chicken, becoming a pest control expert, which is also considered lucky for the original owner. At this moment, Long Xian looked at the big white chicken walking back and forth in the medicine garden and secretly felt surprised. The white chicken stands tall with its head and chest, exuding a majestic demeanor. As it walks, it shakes and shakes, its head bulges and its eyes show spirituality. It seems that after evolving into a spirit chicken, its intelligence has also improved. It scratched back and forth in the ground, and in no time, a large fat bug was scratched out of the soil and swallowed by it in one gulp. The progress on the white chicken's head also instantly changed from 99.3% to 99.4%, almost reaching adulthood. Upon seeing this scene, Long Xian lightly touched his chin and his gaze was lost in thought. There are many things that white chickens have eaten, but only a few fat insects can cause changes in their maturity. Through this change, if you feed different foods to the spirit chicken, you can completely summarize the food that is most helpful to the spirit chicken, and then prepare chicken feed that can greatly shorten the growth cycle of the spirit chicken. Long Xian certainly didn't want to make any chicken feed. At this moment, he thought of another function of the golden finger. Similarly, he thought of raising goo and insects. The speed of raising spiritual insects is not inferior to planting spiritual medicine. Spirit insects are used for refining goo, and the higher the maturity of spirit insects, the higher the success rate of goo refining. Rare spirit insects are even more rare and rare, with each one selling for a sky-high price, but few people know how to raise them. The same type of spiritual insect is raised by different Gu Xiu families and their growth time is completely different. Some Gu Xiu families have higher grade feed, and the time for raising spirit insects is several times shorter than other Gu Xiu families. Of course, this Gu Xiu family makes more money and has a larger profit margin. By lowering prices, they can completely crush their peers and monopolize the market for this insect species. As long as the superior feed for a certain insect species is studied, it is completely a windfall. At this moment, Long Xian had a plan to raise a type of spiritual insect. Raising insects is still like this, let alone raising goo. You should know that the stronger the goo seed, the longer its maturity period is. Many rebellious goo seeds take thousands or even tens of thousands of years to mature. Gu cultivators have a short lifespan and cannot wait for such a long time. But the combat effectiveness of mature and juvenile Gu insects is completely different, and Gu Xiao had to find ways to shorten the maturity period of Gu insects. Often, the breeding method of a powerful Gu species is much more precious than Gu Fang. Cultivating Gu is difficult, and raising Gu is even more difficult. The resources consumed for feeding even exceed the cost of refining Gu. Many Gu cultivators have exhausted their resources by worrying about ways to shorten the maturity period of Gu insects. But at this moment, Long Xian had no worries in this regard at all. In the future, regardless of whether he had contracted any Gu seed with blood, he could prepare the most suitable feed for it. Shortening the mature Gu seed from 10,000 years to 100 years or even less is not a dream. This is simply cheating, and Long Xian was excited in his heart. The extreme usage methods of ripening solution for each type of spiritual medicine have been studied almost. As long as I use ripening solution according to the methods I recorded, the yield of this medicine garden is enough to create an additional half of the profit. With such a high share, the money for refining the first Gu bug is completely there. Long Xian clenched his fist in excitement, his eyes shining brightly. Excited, he reached out to the chicken coop and prepared to take out a few spirit eggs to celebrate. Speaking of which, he was really curious about the taste of the eggs laid by the spirit chicken. The spirit eggs were round and smooth, white and large, rich in spiritual power and sufficient nutrition. At first glance, they looked very delicious, making him crave them. However, as soon as his thief's hand touched the round egg, the white chicken immediately became aware and lowered its head, pouting fiercely at his hand. Go, go, be reckless. Spring comes and goes, flowers bloom. In a blink of time, a year has passed, and the colorful spiritual flowers in the medicine garden bloom, weaving into a colorful ocean. When the wind blows, it brings an intoxicating fragrance of flowers, making people feel like they are in a dream. By the flower sea, Long Xian lay on a rocking chair, with paper and tea filled with Chinese characters on the table next to him. At this moment, he was leisurely reading a book in his hand, blowing a gentle breeze, feeling very comfortable. His originally emaciated figure has become much more rounded this year, probably due to eating too many spiritual eggs. The big white chicken, who was also eating fat and strong, was patrolling back and forth in the medicine garden, searching for the spiritual insects that grew on the elixir. As long as it showed its head, it would be eaten in one bite by its sharp-eyed eyes. Long Xian gave it a resounding name. Influenced by his past love of calling the chicken in the game, Chicken Brother, he decided to name it, Chicken Brother, out of nostalgia for his past life, even though it was a female. With the presence of Brother Ji, it saved Long Xian a considerable amount of work, eliminating the need for pest control and saving money on medication. This is completely a buffet for it, with sufficient nutrition every day, eating until full, and being able to lay at least one egg a day. Of course, it all went into Long Xian's stomach. And at this moment, he was holding a book with the 3 words, Changxing Jing, written on the cover, which was a health cultivation method. The health preservation technique belongs to the common practice in this world, and it is easy for all mortals to learn, almost everyone has it. This is also deliberately spread by the Gu Xiu family, with the aim of allowing ordinary people to live for decades more, so that they can do more work and grow more food for them. The Longevity Sutra is divided into 10 levels, and each level of cultivation can increase one's lifespan by 10 years. The original master's cultivation qualifications were not good, and his cultivation speed was very slow, except for the Eternal Life Sutra, which was a rare talent in 100 years. The realm of Gu cultivation can be divided from low to high into the period of gathering spirit, washing marrow, spiritual sea, and exiting the body. Each major realm is further divided into 4 sub-realms. Early, middle, late, and peak. The period of leaving the body is also known as the Gu King because it is the strongest in this region. And the original owner is only in the early stages of gathering spirits at the age of 15 or 16, which shows their aptitude. This world, like the traditional cultivation world, emphasizes pure flow, and the purer the attribute, the faster the cultivation speed. The single attribute represents the heavenly qualification, with the fastest cultivation speed, while the dual attribute represents the earth qualification, with the second highest cultivation speed. The original master had 5 attributes: gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. His aptitude was not the worst, it could only be said to be ordinary. In addition, there were no cultivation resources for casual cultivation, so it is understandable that his cultivation speed is so slow. But if a person has shortcomings, they must have strengths. God will close a door for you, and at the same time, He will open a window for you. The original master was unable to cultivate, but he had a high talent for practicing health preservation techniques. The rest of mortals struggle to break through the 5th level of the Eternal Life Sutra during their lifetime, but they have already reached the 10th level of cultivation at a young age, increasing their lifespan by 100 years out of thin air. Long Xian also accidentally discovered that the progress displayed on the Longevity Sutra was not 100%, but a small 10%. Driven by curiosity, he tried to continue writing according to the previous rules. While he certainly did not have the ability to continue writing, he had a mistake extractor. If the progress disappears, it means that it has been masked incorrectly, then delete and rewrite it. Otherwise, it means that it has been masked correctly and can continue to be masked further. He exploded his liver for a year, and it really allowed him to successfully continue writing to the 20th level. Starting from the 11th level, each level increases his lifespan by 100 years. If we continue to deduce in the future, we don't know how much longevity yuan can be added to each layer. It may still be 100 years, 200 years, or even more. However, a rare 20-level skill only has a progress of 20%, which is equivalent to a severely incomplete skill. It's really a ghost. He is well aware that the Eternal Life Sutra really only has 10 levels in this world, and even in this region, there are no techniques that exceed 10 levels. Long Xian felt some liver pain, so he only deduced 10% of the content, which took him a year. The later content became more complex and profound, to the extent that his current knowledge could not continue to deduce, and it clearly required more time. He couldn't imagine how long it would take to deduce the Eternal Life Sutra to 100%, 100 years, 1,000 years, or even 10,000 years. Chapter 3. Jixifang City. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Long Xian slowly put down the Eternal Life Sutra with a somewhat dazed expression. Isn't the purpose of practicing for immortality? If the Longevity Sutra really allows him to have a lifespan of millions of years, then he is equivalent to being reborn and has completed the ultimate goal of cultivation. He can now lie flat. Of course, this was just a casual thought for him. Even if an ordinary person without military force could live forever, they might not live long. After all, this is a world where martial arts are paramount, and the top priority should be to refine the first gu. As an entomologist in his previous life, he had a keen sense of fusion of insects and insects. In his view, gene fusion may not necessarily be the best combination of strong genes. For example, the strongest tigers and lions on the surface combine to give birth to the lion-tiger beast, which has a very weak overall ability and a low immune system, making it extremely difficult to survive. Although ants are weak, if they fuse with the genes of certain organisms, they can actually produce terrifying effects. It is precisely because of his professional expertise and the cost-free nature of conducting various taboo experiments that creating his own gu fang is not a difficult task for him. However, considering the shortage of funds for beginners in the early stages, it is definitely a luxury to start by crafting a rebellious insect. So the first gu fang he created himself had an extremely low cost, but despite its low cost, gu insects made from cheap materials may not necessarily be very weak. His philosophy is that a strong combination may not necessarily become stronger, and using the genes of certain weak insects may have very terrifying effects. In the past, although centipedes, venomous snakes, scorpions, spiders, and toads were not insects, Miao Gu masters classified these 5 types of creatures as insects and used them for refining Gu. This is also the case in this world, where these 5 types of organisms are not only classified as insects, but are also the 5 strongest insect species, known as the 5 poisons by the people of this world. The 5 poisons are the strongest insects, so the vast majority of Gu cultivators use the 5 poisons to refine Gu. Long Xian had never heard of using flies or caterpillars to refine Gu. It's not because flies and caterpillars are not insects, it's entirely because these 2 insects are too weak. The reason why Long Xian's Gu Fang is cheap is entirely because it uses those very obscure insects. For example, cockroaches, their combat power is weak, but people in this world may not know that cockroaches are invincible cockroaches. Xiaoqiang can withstand hundreds of times its own pressure unscathed, not eating or drinking for several months without dying, not dying from internal organ damage, and can also be reincarnated from amputation. Even if its head is chopped off, it can last for 9 days. An atomic bomb exploded in a place where I had a good life in my past life, and all living beings died. Only Xiaoqiang survived, which is outrageous. Xiaoqiang's combat power is not strong, but there is a setting of internal Gu in this world. By parasitizing Gu insects in the body and feeding them with qi, blood, and spiritual power, Gu insects feed back to the host's magical power, forming a symbiotic relationship and mutually beneficial complementarity. Can humans obtain Xiaoqiang's immortality through this method? You should know that this world is a world with spiritual power, and all spirit insects have spiritual power. The spirit insects and cockroaches in this world are far more terrifying than those in previous lives, and all data needs to be increased. Once refined into Gu, the data needs to be further increased. Not dying in this magical world may not be a fantasy. So Long Xian's first task in this world was to study how to make humans immortal. Considering that the ability born from the mutual devouring of various spiritual insects is uncontrollable and unpredictable. So when Long Xian created his own Gu Fang, he deliberately only wrote on it various types of cockroaches, so that the immortal genes of each type could be perfectly fused. He doesn't quite believe that such a Gu Fang will give birth to the possibility of other abilities. Now everything is ready except for Dongfeng. After a year of accumulation, he has accumulated a lot of spiritual medicine. As long as he releases it, he can gather the funds to refine the first Gu. Long Xian stood up excitedly, first walked into the medicine garden, pulled out all the spiritual medicines with 100% numbers, put them in the storage bag, and replayed them before rushing out. He is preparing to bring the spiritual medicine to the nearby Jixifang city for sale, and today he is trying to refine Gu. He can't wait anymore. Jixifang city is very close to Dashi village, and it only takes half an hour to walk. Although Fengshe is very close to the village, it was Long Xian's first time visiting this place. As soon as he entered, he was immediately surprised by the bustling scene here. Here, there are scattered cultivators sitting on the ground setting up stalls, with a wide variety of treasures including spiritual pills, spiritual insects, spiritual medicines, martial arts, spiritual tools, mineral materials, and animal materials. The vendor and others were arguing with each other, their faces turning red and their necks thick. The noise of bargaining was heard, and everyone was in a frenzy. The area with the most trade in Gu Xiu is always Gubu, and when Long Xian entered here, he saw all kinds of Gubu, which was a great eye-opening experience. There are many scattered cultivators who possess Gu Fang, but they never sell Gu Fang. They only refine Gubu and place it on the stall for a long time. Not only because all Gu cultivators have the concept of self-preservation, but also because once Gu formulas are spread, they will not only be studied by others to find ways to restrain them, but also become competitive once more people refine them. It was not a problem for Long Xian to buy an ordinary Gubu with his current wealth, but after thinking for a moment, he quickly gave up on such an idea. It is best not to buy second-hand Gubu, as it is easy for people to tamper with it. The gu produced by oneself is the most tacit and loyal. The more masters the gu insect handles, the more complex their thoughts become, making it easier for them to backfire on their masters. So for the sake of your own life, it's better to create your own gu fang and refine gu by yourself. Long Xian first found a business association to sell all the spiritual medicines, earning a total of 307 lower-grade spiritual stones. However, he also bought the materials on the gu fang he created and 10 gu cups for refining gu, which cost him 77.88 in an instant. Long Xian never expected that the price of a first-grade spiritual medicine would be so low. The spiritual medicine filled with a storage bag was only sold for 307 yuan as a lower-grade spiritual stone. Upon inquiry, I found out that low-grade spiritual medicines have no environmental restrictions and can be grown on a large scale. Hiring a group of mortals can basically plant as much as they want. So the first-grade spiritual medicine has already gone through the streets and is not worth any money. Perhaps he just stole all the spiritual medicines in the medicine garden and ran away, and Long Lao probably won't feel sorry. After realizing this reality, Long Xian could only carry the remaining 10 spirit stones to stroll around this bustling market. I don't know what 10 spirit stones can buy. San Xiu's family is poor, and there are hardly any particularly valuable items at the stalls. However, San Xiu enjoys adventuring deep in the mountains and forests, and the things he finds are also diverse, with everything available. If there are no good things at all, it is absolutely impossible. One of the biggest characteristics of casual cultivators is their limited knowledge, as well as the abundance of unfamiliar treasures. They often take out valuable items and sell them at a low price, which gives others the opportunity to pick up leaks. This also makes the big clan Gu Xiu, who likes to pick up leaks, flock to this place every day to try their luck, making it a paradise for Taobao. Some people get rich here, while others get scammed and lose their money here. At this moment, Long Xian discovered another function of the golden finger. He can see the progress of all the treasures on the booth. Don't underestimate this ability, it can judge many things. For example, some things that haven't made progress are probably fake, such as nonsensical techniques and various useless remedies that others have picked up. There is also a mysterious iron with an infinite progress approaching 100%. Long Xian seriously suspects that once the progress of the mysterious iron reaches 100%, it will become a mysterious iron essence, and its value will increase more than 100 times. Unfortunately, even ordinary xiantai cannot be bought by him now, and he can only reluctantly give up. Similarly, for spirit stones, once the progress of top-grade spirit stones approaches 100%, there is a high possibility of a transition from top-grade spirit stones to ultimate spirit stones. Premium spirit stones are priceless treasures that are rare in 100 years, and their value is immeasurable. As for those living creatures, let alone those, for example, some spirit insects have a progress of 15%, while others have a progress of 25.6800%, with a string of numbers after the decimal point. This is easy to understand. The longer the maturity period, the more the spirit insect needs to use decimal points to improve accuracy. If you see a spirit worm with a lot of decimal places, you must pay attention. The lifespan of this spirit insect must be very long, and the longer the lifespan, the more complex the spirit insect is. It can be said that the lifespan of the spirit insect Gu insect is completely positively correlated with its strength. In this way, there are too many opportunities to pick up leaks. Although the novice Long Xian doesn't know any treasures on the road, in terms of his ability to pick up leaks, everyone here really can't compare to him. Bees collect all their nectar and pollen, but the yellow clumps on their legs are pollen. As Baidu said, there are too many sprays without clearing the mine in advance. Chapter 4. Picking up leaks makes me happy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. For him, this is a paradise full of treasures on earth. There are too many valuable treasures on the ground waving at him, and he can easily become rich overnight with just a handful. Unfortunately, He is shy and can only stare at them. What can I buy with 10 spirit stones? He suddenly realized that shopping for a poor person was a wrong decision, and besides 10 spirit stones, he only had the spirit chicken and the 20-story, eternal Life Sutra, that he could handle. Brother Ji can save money on medicine, but he must not sell it, and he dare not sell the Longevity Sutra. The last 10 layers of the Longevity Sutra can increase the lifespan by a total of 1,000 years, which is not a small amount. Most Gu cultivators cannot survive for such a long time. Nothing is more attractive than increasing longevity. Once his Eternal Life Sutra is taken out, it is enough to lure those old monsters who are about to enter the earth. Long Xian patrolled various stalls for a while before finally stopping in front of an old man's booth, his gaze fixed on a broken honeycomb. 3/4 of the honeycomb is missing, leaving only a quarter of the honeycomb. Only 2 small bees are alive, and their state is also on the verge of death. Most of the eggs are also dead, and there are not many live eggs. Seeing a customer stop, the old man looked up and smiled, saying, "This is the hive of the intermediate level spirit insect, the thorn bee. You don't have to say I know the terror of the intermediate level spirit insect." In order to obtain the honey from this hive, the old man had to fight his life to get it. Honey has beauty benefits, and I have other uses, but there are still many bee pupae and thorny bees in the beehive. I'll sell you a cheap one if you're young. How about 100 spirit stones? Upon hearing this, Long Xian remained calm, but his heart was secretly pleased. The old man was indeed impressed. Although he also had limited knowledge and did not know what species this wasp was, it was definitely not a thorny bee. It was definitely a higher variety that looked very similar to the thorny bee. After his research, it was found that spirit insects are immature. The progress displayed on the lower-level spirit insect head is accurate to 2 decimal places, indicating a maturity period of more than 10 years but less than 100 years. The progress displayed on the head of the intermediate spirit insect is accurate to 3 decimal places, indicating a maturity period of over 100 years but less than 1,000 years. And the progress on the heads of these 2 young bees is 82.3648% and 82.3251%, respectively. The progress is accurate to 4 decimal places, and this may not be a top-quality spirit insect. The maturity period is over 1,000 years. Long Xian is determined to win this pair of unknown bees and insects. His golden fingers can easily configure feeds suitable for various spiritual insects. He has long planned to raise spiritual insects. And Longlao's medicine garden is full of flowers, which is a good place for keeping bees and insects. The problem of the food source for bees and insects can be directly wasted. After reaching a certain scale, one can earn spiritual stones by selling honey, which is another considerable source of wealth. After making up his mind, Long Xian took a deep breath. Although his heart was filled with excitement, he pretended to be very impatient. "Are you fooling me when I'm young? Don't think I can't tell. The bee pupae and insects inside are all dead, leaving only 2 half-dead ones. Moreover, the combat power of group living spirit insects is much lower than that of solitary living spirit insects. If there are thousands of thorn bees, even top-grade spirit insects may need to temporarily avoid their sharpness. If there are only 2, I'm afraid I can't even defeat a lower-grade spirit worm. If it's used for refining goo, what's the use of 2 with an average success rate of 1 in several tens of points in refining goo? Given the health status of these 2 bees and insects, it's possible that I died right after buying them back. Isn't my 100 spirit stones just floating in the water? At a fixed price, 10 spirit stones. If you don't sell them, I'll leave immediately." Long Xian pretended to be leaving. "Oh my, I've seen someone cut the price in half before. It's the first time I've seen you cut it directly to 1/10. I'm not lying to you. The thorn bee is really fierce, but it took me half of my body to get it. Even if I only sell 100 spirit stones, I'm still at a loss. It's better to just give 10 spirit stones and kill me directly. Upon hearing this, Long Xian wanted to laugh in his heart. It was a top-grade spirit insect, could it not be fierce? He is also considered lucky. Joke, what's the relationship between your heavy losses and me? What's the point of including your losses in the price of the goods? The price is what it should be, and I won't even give an extra point. Don't blame me for not reminding you. The situation of these two bees is very bad, as if they won't live long. The longer they drag on, the greater the likelihood of them falling into their hands. At least 10 spirit stones can still be sold now. If no one pays attention for a long time and these two bees die, then you really won't be able to sell even 1 spirit stone. Long Xian's words completely pierced his dead spot. His expression hesitated and he hesitated for a long time before finally biting his teeth and saying in pain, take it, take it. You're really good at bargaining. However, it was agreed in advance that the purchase will be released. If the thorn bee arrives at home, it will die. Don't blame me, I won't recognize it if it comes. Long Xian ignored his words and took out the only 10 spirit stones, which were also painfully thrown onto the stall. He picked up the beehive and held it in his hand. From his perspective, the reason why the wasp beetle looks so lethargic is entirely because this little old man is too stingy and has drained all his honey to live and starve like this. The dead bees and insects in the hive may also starve to death alive. As long as there is honey, there should be no problem in reviving these two bees. Long Xian was really afraid that these two bees would starve to death immediately, so he put the beehive into a breeding bag and left as soon as possible. Although there were still many treasures waiting for him to pick up in the market, Long Xian could only pray that those treasures had not been bought by discerning buyers, despite being penniless now. Wait for him to make another fortune before finishing all the good things in one go. After rushing home quickly, Long Xian immediately hung the beehive on a fruit tree next to the medicine garden. The flowers in the medicine garden are not ordinary wild flowers in the wild. They are a top-notch spiritual medicine, and the fragrance of the flowers is so strong. At the moment when the fragrance of flowers drifted into the beehive, the two lethargic bees and insects suddenly regained their spirits, instantly full of blood and resurrected. They eagerly flew out of the beehive, their eyes shining as they flew towards the sea of flowers. Two little bees happily pounced into a red flower and quickly flew out into a purple flower, frantically collecting pollen and nectar from the flower. They were busy and not even half alive as before. In less than a moment, the short legs of the two little bees were covered in heavy pollen, so heavy that they could hardly fly. They flew into the nest and began happily making honey. Seeing this scene, Long Xian felt relieved. In this world that is good at playing with insects, there are many ways to cultivate queen bees. He only waited to cultivate 2 small bees into queen bees, so that he could have endless honey to eat. Speaking of which, he was really curious about the taste of honey made from medicinal nectar. Afterwards, Long Xian took out the purchased spiritual insects from the insect rearing bag, and quickly filled the entire table with bottles and jars. Looking at the insect jars on the table, Long Xian's heart quickened slightly as he prepared to refine the first insect in his life, which made his mood both nervous and excited, and his heart was very restless. This is his self-created Gufang, his unique Gufang. There are 100 materials on the Gufang, and he is looking forward to what kind of Gubu will be born from this Gufang. Chapter 5. When refining Gu is in progress. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The process of refining Gu is very simple. You only need to gather all the spirit insects needed on the Gu recipe, and then put them into the Gu cup to starve for a period of time, forcing them to devour each other. With time, you can become Gu. If there are some insect species that do not like fighting, other means are needed to stimulate their internal aggression, but these methods are temporarily beyond his understanding. The mutual devouring of spirit insects requires digestion time, some need to wait for 749 days, some need to wait for 981 days, and some powerful goo species even need to wait for 3 years, with no fixed number. Refining goo takes a long time and is not a big deal. The difficulty lies in the fact that there is a failure rate in refining goo. Some goo recipes have a success rate of 1/10, while others have a success rate of 1,000th. Those with a black face may not be able to become goo even after 10,000 rounds of refining. Once the goo refining fails, all materials will be lost and all resources invested will be wasted. Long Xian had no idea what the success rate of this goo fang was. He just prepared 10 materials and purchased 10 goo cups for refining goo, intending to refine goo at the same time. Many goo cultivators refine goo in this way, casting a wide net to catch big fish and saving time. Even if it's refined, it's okay. You can take out the excess insects and sell them. Not only will you not lose, but you will also make a profit. It is worth mentioning that the same type of goo insect feeds on each other, so each goo cultivator can only raise one goo insect of the same type. If they refine too much, they can only trade it out as soon as possible. However, soon Long Xian realized that his preparation seemed unnecessary, and he also discovered another function of the golden finger. When refining goo, you can also see the progress on the goo cup. Once the progress reaches 100%, it is the day of goo completion. That's the question. If a spirit worm in a goo cup is destined not to become a goo, will it still show progress? Is the goo cup that can display progress bound to become goo, while the goo cup that does not display progress destined to fail in refining goo? Can he immediately open the goo cup that hasn't shown any progress, and then find a favorable time to refine the goo cup again until the goo cup can see the progress? Long Xian's scalp is about to explode. That is to say, his success rate in refining goo may be 100%, so there is no need to gamble on that damn success rate like other goo cultivators do, and there is no need to worry about wasting materials. He felt that he could challenge the sky-defying goo fang with a success rate of 1 in 10,000. Long Xian's breathing became rapid, and the effect of this golden finger was a bit overwhelming. In a blink of an eye, 40.9 days passed, and finally there was a movement in Long Xian's 10 goo cups. As he had anticipated, once a number appeared on the goo cup, the success rate would inevitably be 100%, and the moment the number became 100%, it was the day of becoming a goo. It was precisely because of the numerical reminder that Long Xian waited early today and witnessed the scene of Gubu breaking the cup with his own eyes. Long Xian widened his eyes, unable to suppress his excitement. 10 goo cups almost changed at the same time, and 10 red little chongs crawled out of the goo cups one after another. Sure enough, all 10 goo cups have become goo, and no materials have been discarded. The success rate of goo is 100%. This is completely unimaginable to others. Long Xian excitedly ran over, took out a goo jar and fastened it onto his body, dividing it into 10 pieces to pack. He never forgot the taboo of Gubu, cannibalism. To prevent them from devouring each other, they must be separated as soon as possible. After completing all of this, Long Xian finally had time to approach and carefully study. He had already named the new goo species that made its debut in this world as Xiaoqiang goo. Long Xian pierced his finger with a needle and dripped a drop of blood onto the head of Xiaoqiang goo, completing the blood contract ceremony in a simple way. From the moment of establishing a spiritual connection with it, although Long Xian was unable to communicate with it through language, he quickly became aware of its abilities through the power of his soul. As expected, the ability possessed by the goo insect refined from 100 cockroaches is Xiaoqiang's immortality. Of course, it is not absolute immortality, as research and development funds are too limited and only the most ordinary materials are used. There is still too much power to kill Xiaoqiang, but it can be summarized as the same level of conventional strike ability immortality. To truly achieve immortality, it may require the use of top-grade spirit insects, cockroaches, and goo refining techniques. There are too many ways to kill the small powerful goo made from inferior cockroaches, far from being an immortal body. It is said to be more resistant to beating and more vivid. The ability to resist beating may not be considered a big deal in the eyes of the clan, but in the world of casual cultivation, it can definitely be considered a quite good ability. Long Xian was already very satisfied. He never thought of creating a true immortal body with a pile of the cheapest materials, which was absolutely impossible. He satisfactorily placed Xiaoqiang Gu in the center of his palm and was extremely fond of this debut work. According to the classification of the quality of Gu Bu in this world, his small and strong Gu should belong to the lower grade Gu Bu. The quality of Gu Bu in this world can be divided into lower grade, middle grade, top grade, and top grade. The ultimate Gu insect is the king of Gu, and it is what all Gu cultivators crave the most. The dream of all Gu cultivators is to refine a top-quality Gu insect in their lifetime, and each top-quality Gu insect has a fatal attraction to Gu cultivators. But it is extremely difficult to refine top-quality Gu Bu, and the owners are extremely rare. Long Xian aspired to create a top-notch Gu formula himself, and refining top-notch Gu insects was also his dream. He naturally couldn't have produced top-quality Gu insects the first time he refined Gu. The quality of Gu insects is determined by the main ingredients in the Gu formula. The so-called main material is the one in the Gu Fang where all the spirit insects, after fighting each other, will surely laugh until the end. The main material must have the highest combat power among all the materials of the Gu Fang, and must be kept until the end. Otherwise, if the main material dies, it means the Gu refining has failed. If the main ingredient is top-grade spirit insects, then the refined Gu insects are top-grade Gu insects. Similarly, the main ingredients of Xiaoqiang Gu are inferior materials, so no matter how unique their abilities are, they should still be classified as inferior Gu bug. But in Long Xian's view, although Xiaoqiang Gu is the weakest inferior Gu insect, its ability to resist beating may be even more practical than that of medium-grade Gu insect. But the same type of Gu insect can only be used with one, and this time there was a small accident during Gu refining, resulting in 9 more being refined. How to deal with the remaining 9 Xiaoqiang Gu has become a difficult problem, and we cannot afford to feed them to Chicken Brother recklessly. After much thought, Long Xian decided to sell the excess Gu Bu that he had refined, just like other scattered cultivators. There are many scattered cultivators selling unique Gu insects in the local market, and it is not uncommon to create Gu formulas in this world. Because the materials of inferior Gu Fang may be single digits, or even just 2 types of materials. It is possible to create a Gu Fang by blindly using the method of following fate. Many scattered cultivations that have not been passed down are created using the method of following fate, so unique Gu Fang is everywhere in this world, and everyone has the ability to create their own Gu Fang. The only thing is that the unique Gu recipe for scattered cultivation often repeats itself and is generally extremely weak due to the lack of materials. However, the ultimate Gu Fang is not something that a normal person can create. Long Xian can expose the ability of self-created Gu Fang, but must not expose the ability of self-created ultimate Gu Fang. So it's not a remarkable thing for him to go to the local market to sell unique Gu insects, so he can confidently do it. He is too poor now and urgently needs a huge sum of money to buy that black iron and that high-quality spiritual stone. He can even set up a stall like other casual cultivators to sell his unique Gu Bu for a long time. The cost of Xiaoqiang Gu is very cheap, but the selling price can be very high. What's even more outrageous is that it has no failure rate and is completely profiteering. As for being bought and used to deal with himself, he doesn't care at all. After all, it's an inferior Gu Bu, and he actually has a better choice. Small and strong Gu is just a transition for him, and he will soon be eliminated. He can use it any way others want. However, it is impossible for him to find the materials now, so he can only temporarily replace them with Xiaoqiang Gu. The better choice he spoke of was actually the famous water bear in his past life. In terms of immortality, cockroaches are completely like younger brothers in front of water bears. Water bear insects can withstand ultra-high temperatures of 151 C and ultra-low temperatures of -272 C. Placed in the deepest Mariana Trench, it cannot be killed by atomic radiation. Even if scientists send it into space, it cannot be killed. Even without food and water, it can last for 30 years. Water bear insects are resistant to hypoxia, vacuum, high pressure, and low pressure, and can regenerate after amputation, even repairing DNA damage. The vitality of the water bear insect can be considered a miracle of the world. The Earth has experienced 5 major extinction events, extinction of the vast majority of organisms, but only it has not been eradicated. However, the volume of water bear insects is too small. The vast majority of water bear insects are only 3 to 5 microns, and the small ones are difficult to observe with the naked eye. Only with the help of a microscope can their morphology be clearly seen. This world obviously does not have the ability of a microscope, so if you want to refine water bear goo, you must first refine microscopic goo. This requires him to create his own goo Fang, and water bear goo cannot be completed in a short period of time. When the micro-insect emerges, he will see more micro-insects. You should know that micro-insects are a vast resource treasure trove that has not yet been discovered by Gu Xiu in this world, with a vast variety that has not been named or captured by humans. The entire world of tiny spiritual insects will belong exclusively to him. In addition to being divided into 2 categories of internal and external Gu insects, the Gu insects in this world can be further subdivided into natural, enhanced, animal, plant, pupil, dark, magic, special, production. He may create a new school of thought. The microbiology school, and he will become the founder of this school. Long Xian is full of wild hopes for the future. Chapter 6. Li Laodao. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After more than a month, Long Xian returned to this market again, but this time he was no longer a buyer, but a proud small vendor. Long Xian covered his face, put on a big hat, and spread a white cloth on any place he wanted. On top of it, he placed 9 insect jars containing small and powerful goo. I placed a homemade folding chair next to it and sat down. Afterwards, he began to contemplate the pricing of Xiaoqianggu. It is worth mentioning that this world can be said to have currency, or it can be said to have no currency. Because spirit stones can only be used to exchange for cheap goods, expensive items cannot be exchanged with spirit stones, and can only be obtained through bartering. Strictly speaking, spirit stones are not considered the universal currency of this world. Because spirit stones are definitely irregularly shaped, varying in size and concentration of spiritual power. Can someone absorb half of their spiritual power before taking out the flowers? Since there are differences in spirit stones, it is even less likely that they will become currency. Spiritual stones are only equivalent in this world, and trading them is equivalent to exchanging goods, not buying them with money. So spirit stones cannot be exchanged for priceless items. Also, due to the inconsistency of spirit stones, the prices of various materials are negotiated with each other, rather than being uniformly priced in one place. Pricing can only be within a rough range, and vendors have a high degree of freedom. But Long Xian considered that the birth of a new thing should first open up the market, and pricing should not be too high. So Long Xuanxi came up with a plan to temporarily set the price of this small and powerful goo, which can be priced at will, at the price of 300 spiritual stones. He planned to wait for the reputation to ferment before raising the price. Of course, the quality of spirit stones should be acceptable. They cannot be the kind of spiritual power that is about to be absorbed by people, nor can they be just the size of a little finger. For the first time setting up a stall, the things on the stall were a bit lacking and looked a bit shabby, but as time goes by, the things on his stall will eventually become more abundant. Afterwards, he placed a sign on the booth with the effect and price of Xiaoqianggu, waiting for the first buyer to arrive, and quietly waiting for the volunteer to take the bait. He felt very novel when he was the first vendor. His arrival immediately caught the attention of the other vendors. The vendor sitting right next to him was a spirited old man who saw the things placed on his stall and spoke up. Is it an inferior goo insect? Goo insect is not much more expensive than essence, and the weakest inferior goo insect is not very popular. Besides, you're not refining the 5 poisons, you're a very obscure cockroach, so there are even fewer willing traders. There are many scattered cultivators selling medium-grade goo in this market, and even 3 scattered cultivators selling high-quality goo, all of which are unique goo. There are also people everywhere who sell inferior products like the unique goo insect, and your products have no competitiveness at all. No problem. The aroma of wine is not afraid of deep alleys. As long as there is a trader, I can open up sales channels, Long Xian said confidently. He has great confidence in the insect he has developed. Laodao didn't take it seriously. He really didn't believe that such a young doll could develop such a powerful insect. Although the sign stated the function of the goo, he only believed it was an exaggeration. How could an inferior goo insect have such strong resistance to attacks? Such a powerful ability cannot appear on an inferior goo insect. However, just as he was about to answer, Long Xian's first customer walked up to his stall and Laodao wisely closed his mouth. Li Erniu picked up one of the goo jars, opened it to look at the goo insects inside, and then looked at the sign written all over the booth, showing a surprised expression. He has never seen this kind of goo insect before, and it is undoubtedly a newly developed species. The emergence of new goo insects always arouses the curiosity of others. The newly created goo insects may be strong, weak, or have some peculiar abilities. But the new goo has not been tested in actual combat, nor has it developed any tactics, and no one knows which goo insects are most suitable for pairing with. Therefore, few people are willing to be the first to eat crabs. But there are also benefits. No one will know about a newly emerged goo species, let alone know how to restrain it. Danger often comes from the unknown. Having a bug that the enemy has never seen before can often lead to surprise victories. He is preparing to face off against a dead opponent. The enemy who knows you the best will always be your enemy. The dead opponent knows all his cards, so having a goo bug that his opponent can never understand may be a good choice. Li Erniu showed an interested expression and looked at Long Xian, asking, your little mighty goo can give people immortality, but really? Don't. I've never said that before. Long Xian quickly waved his hand to deny it. I have written it very clearly, just regular hits of the same level won't die, after all, they are inferior goo bug. There are too many ways to kill you at the same level. For example, if your heart is pierced by a sword, as long as there is a small powerful goo, it will not die. But if your heart is twisted into pieces by someone, how can it not die? Xiaoqian goo has not yet risen to the level of instantly restoring your heart. But as long as you continuously improve the growth rate of Xiaoqian goo, its limit to taking damage will become higher and higher. The biggest advantage of Xiaoqian goo is that it eats everything, including paper, leather, cotton wool, sawdust. You don't have to worry about its food problem at all. Upon hearing this, Li Erniu's eyes lit up, which was truly a very practical advantage. Goo is a very expensive thing, and the things it eats are also diverse. Some goo even specialize in eating expensive things such as gold, spirit stones, and spiritual medicines, which can often crush a wealthy goo shio. Not being picky about food is definitely a bonus. That's not bad, after all, it's just a low-grade goo. If you really say it will give people the power of absolute immortality, then I won't believe it either. I'll replace this little strong goo. 3 medium-grade spirit stones, please keep them. Li Erniu threw 3 high-quality intermediate spirit stones on the stall and left without saying a word, carrying the goo jar in his hand. A medium-grade spirit stone tops 100 low-grade spirit stones, and Long Xian's storage bag has limited space, so he is more willing to accept medium-grade spirit stones. After the successful opening, Long Xuanqin happily put away 3 medium-grade spirit stones and shouted casually, "Don't miss it when you pass by. Take a look at the top-quality Xiao Qiangu, you can't afford to lose money, you can't afford to be deceived." Seeing no one coming for a long time, Long Xian turned his head and looked at the old vendor who had just talked to him, intending to sell it to his peers for a try. "Old man, I believe you have also seen the function of my little strong gu. You must be old and have poor legs. Trading my little strong gu would be a good insurance policy. Meeting is fate. For the sake of being my neighbor, I'll sell you a cheap price and accept 299 spirit stones from you." Li Laodao suddenly blew his beard and glared, "You little devil, you fooled me. I don't believe your little strong gu really has this ability. Although it won't give the host a true sense of immortality, its ability is still a bit scary. Do you know how terrifying the actual combat effect of this ability is? When fighting, you can completely exchange damage with your opponent, and doubling your combat power out of thin air is not an exaggeration. This is not the ability that inferior gu bug can possess. If your little strong gu really has this ability, in front of medium-grade gu bug, I would rather choose your little strong gu." Chapter 7. Stone Gu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Don't you believe it? Long Xian gave him a sidelong glance and smiled, "Did I exaggerate? Just give it a try and you'll know. My Xiaoqian Gu has the ability to regenerate from amputation. You can chop off one hand on the spot now. Do you think I can just connect my hand?" Of course, Master Li wouldn't agree to chop off the hands. If Xiaoqian Gu didn't have the ability to regenerate from amputation, wouldn't he be foolish to chop off his hands? Why chop hands to verify Xiaoqian Gu's ability? I'll know as soon as I test it. Li Laodao was inspired to succeed and decided to replace it, whether true or false, to test its ability on the spot. If what is said is false, just settle the accounts on the spot. Can we still run under his nose? Li Laodao walked directly to Long Xian's stall, picked up a gu can casually, opened it without even looking at it, and directly took the little Chang gu blood covenant inside. As long as a blood contract is established with the gu insect, the owner can have a clear understanding of its abilities. Through the information transmitted through his soul, Li Laodao's expression quickly froze, his face changing again and again, gradually revealing a look of disbelief. How could it be? Even though they are very weak insects, how could they have such terrifying abilities? Li Laodao murmured softly. "All right, since you already have a blood contract, then hurry up and hand over the spirit stone. For the sake of the neighbors, we only charge you 299 spirit stones." Long Xian yawned and kept urging. Li Laodao looked at Long Xian, and now his gaze was different. The person who could create such a gu fang was by no means from the pool, and he had already developed a desire to make friends. "He, I'm old and clumsy. I didn't expect even weak cockroaches to be used to refine gu. I've also broadened my horizons. I really can't underestimate any insects in the world. But fortunately, I didn't listen to you just now and cut my hands. Although this little strong gu really has the ability to make people break limbs and regenerate, it hasn't been exaggerated to the extent of instant recovery. Rebirth after amputation is an extremely slow process, which may take several years. If I really listen to you and chop off your hands, then my trouble will be big. People in the gu world cannot help themselves, and no one has an enemy yet." Li Laodao also threw 3 medium-grade spirit stones at Long Xian's booth and said with a smile. Opening another order so quickly, Long Xian's face showed a joyful smile. Seeing that Long Xian didn't continue speaking, Li Laodao, who had developed a friendly heart, continued to talk and said, "I have done your business, and reciprocity is still acceptable. Do you also need to take care of my business? Although my gu chong is not a unique gu chong, it is definitely the most ferocious gu chong in this neighborhood. I guarantee you are satisfied." Upon hearing this, Long Xian also became interested and turned to look at his booth. Compared to the shabby single-digit items sold at his stall, Laodao's stall was so rich that it was almost full, filled with bottles and jars filled with various insects. However, his bottles and jars are getting smaller and the insects inside are getting smaller and smaller, all of which are internal insects used for parasitism. However, his internal venom has no benefit to the host, it is all used to parasitize the enemy's body and harm people. It is precisely because they do not use it themselves that they do not occupy a quota, and they can raise as much as they want, which belongs to consumables. It is worth mentioning that there is a quota limit for the number of goo insects that goo cultivators can use, and the quota for each goo cultivator varies depending on their soul talent. However, during the spirit gathering period, goo cultivators can average around 4 quotas. Of course, Long Xian has been a human for 2 generations, and the number of goo insects that can be used for blood contracts at the same time may be more than that of ordinary people, or even more than twice. Most goo xiu blood contracts have a very limited number of goo insects, which must be carefully calculated. The internal goo used to harm people is the only type of goo that does not occupy a quota, and almost all goo xiu will raise some. Laodao actually likes to refine this kind of goo boo, he is definitely an old pussy. He should be careful of him. Long Xian immediately took precautions against this. Looking at the introduction of the poisonous insects inside the insect bottle, Long Xian suddenly felt a tingling sensation on his scalp. Stone goo. Shaped like a stone grain, it is often placed on roads filled with gravel. When pedestrians pass by, the stone goo will jump into the human body. The small belly of a victim of goo is as firm as a rock, and their stool becomes secretive. People will also become increasingly thin and die within 6 months. Rice grain goo. Similar in shape to rice grains, often placed in enemy rice. Those who are poisoned by goo have a sudden increase in appetite, often cannot eat enough, and are mentally unstable. If there is no way to relieve goo, they will die for a month. Wart big goo. Often hidden in the crevices of nails, close contact with the target, or tapping the shoulder or shaking hands to plant into the target's body. After infecting the blood, the goo will consume all the internal organs of the target's body, and those who are bitten by the goo often cannot survive for a day. Looking at the increasingly cruel way of dying, Long Xian's face slightly changed. This is the first time that he learned the dangerous degree of the poisonous insects in the world. For example, the stone poisonous insects are the same as the stone grains, and can't be distinguished. And on his way back to the village, there were stones everywhere. If anyone had left a few stone bugs on his way home, that would be okay. Thinking about this possible scene, Long Xian couldn't help but shiver. He can't even distinguish which one is a stone grain and which one is a stone goo, no matter how careful he is, it's useless. This is just the most ordinary stone goo, a goo boo-hai that is even more hidden than stone goo. There are various ways to use goo boo, and it is impossible to defend against them. How should he guard against it? You should know that bacteria and viruses can't see progress right now, which means that things that are too small are ineffective. He can't even see the progress of many insects that are a few millimeters small from a distance, only when they are very close can he see the progress. The method of guarding against goo, even his golden fingers cannot help him. Long Xian was really scared at this moment. This was something that could kill him, but now he had no countermeasures. If anyone secretly touched and drugged him, he really didn't have the confidence to escape. No, research on microscopic goo must be put on the agenda. No, the second goo insect should refine microscopic goo. Without the microscopic goo, those small insects used for eating people cannot be guarded against. As long as the microscopic goo comes out, no one will be able to poison him again. At this point, Long Xian had already made up his mind to focus on the study of microscopic goo in his second project. He is truly afraid of death in his lifetime, and he must take seriously any factors that can threaten the safety of others. After looking at the goo insects with fear again, Long Xian said to Laodao, "No, I'm not interested in these types of goo insects. His current funds have other uses and he doesn't intend to waste them on unimportant matters. And even if he wants this type of insect, he plans to obtain it through self-creation. As soon as the microscopic goo is released, he can study the micro-life type goo insect. The micro-life type goo insect is so small that it cannot be seen with the naked eye. It can fly directly into the enemy's mouth without being noticed, and then harm whoever wants to harm, and whoever can counter it. In terms of concealment, what kind of poisonous insects in the world are more vulnerable to defense than microscopic poisonous insects? Stone goo is his younger brother in front of the Weishin goo. Chapter 8. Gambling Stones. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. In the following period of time, no more customers came to visit, and seeing no one around, Long Xian stopped selling. Although there are still 7 small powerful goo that have not been sold, today I managed to earn 6 medium-level spirit stones, equivalent to 600 lower-level spirit stones. This is not a small amount for a casual cultivator, and Long Xian is very satisfied. Carrying a huge sum of money, he finally has the confidence to go to Taobao. Long Xian couldn't wait to walk into the depths of the market, searching for the mysterious iron and the top-grade spiritual stone that he had been longing for. However, after a month and a half, how could it be so coincidental to encounter it again? Moreover, every goo cultivator is busy with cultivation and collecting resources in the wild. It is impossible to set up stalls here every day, and whether they can encounter them can only rely on luck. After searching for a circle without success, Long Xian could only give up in disappointment, as it seemed that he did not have the protagonist's aura. However, it doesn't matter. With so many treasures, the market will one day see a pile of new vendors and treasures flowing in. The treasures are endless. Old treasures do not come, new treasures do not necessarily flow in worse than old treasures. Long Xian adjusted his mindset and walked towards a store with an unusually large area. A while ago, a new chamber of commerce was established here, specializing in fossil trading. Countless fossils were piled up in the yard of the shop. In this world, there are many sources of spiritual insects, including wild capture and artificial breeding. The spiritual medicine in the medicine garden can also produce insects, but only the spiritual insects produced by high-level spiritual medicine have the value of refining goo. The insects produced by the first-level spiritual medicine on the rotten street will be killed by the extermination powder. Some spiritual beasts also harbor certain spiritual insects in their bodies, including those that may be innate in the human body, known as innate spiritual goo. These people often become genius with incredible abilities. Some spiritual insects also come from underground, such as earthworms, mole crickets, and even hard stones may contain insects, and their quality may not be low. The ice age that the earth enters every long cycle actually exists in this world, and it will be even colder. During this period, temperatures plummeted and cold currents invaded the entire world, eroding every corner. The entire surface was covered by heavy snow and glaciers, and the world entered an icy world, covered in white snow and piercing cold winds. At this point, the earth will usher in eternal winter, and in countless years, the earth will no longer welcome a day of warmth. During this period, surface plants were frozen to death on a large scale, and the earth would no longer produce food. All living beings in the world would either freeze to death or starve to death, and the vitality of all things would be cut off. It is unknown how many species will become extinct during the Ice Age, and there are very few survivors. Insects, on the other hand, are the most powerful living organisms. During the Ice Age, insects from all over the world will crawl underground under the guidance of higher-order spiritual insects and enter a dormant period. At the same time, their bodies will be covered with a thick layer of stone to isolate themselves from the erosion of cold. Insects that enter the dormant phase will fall into a state of false death, and all bodily functions will stop functioning. They can continue to not eat or drink, their energy consumption will pause, and their lifespan will also come to a standstill, allowing them to endure endless years. Until external factors disturb them, they will awaken and slowly crawl out of the stone clothes, and when they come out of the world again, it may take millions or even billions of years. And these stones with ancient spirit insects inside are called fossils by Gu Xiu. The spiritual insects in the fossils are too far away, and there is a high possibility of rare species, even species that have been extinct for countless years, with enormous value. Once discovered, they can easily become rich. However, it is impossible for all spiritual insects to survive the Ice Age. Most spiritual insects, even if they have stone coats to keep warm, will freeze to death. There are very few spiritual insects that can survive that period. So most stones are filled with dead insects, which have become true fossils in endless time. There are not a single stone with living insects. The power that controls fossil veins, in order to maximize profits, sells all fossils and transfers all risks to others. Whether it's a loss or a profit, it all depends on personal luck. As a result, the gambling industry that has become popular worldwide has emerged. One knife is poor, one knife is rich, and one knife pierces through linen. This industry is playing with heartbeat. Although most people are at a loss, the vast majority of Gu cultivators still enjoy it, hoping that luck will stand on their side and they can make a fortune overnight by cultivating the rebellious insect species. These people are all gamblers. Don't worry, since there is an industry like gambling stones in this world, it is impossible to have the ability to see through, and the ability to see through can only be developed by Long Xian. Gambling stones have certain patterns, and the presence of live insects can be estimated based on the texture of the stones, which has led to the emergence of many gambling stone masters. But even the most powerful gambling stone master in this world has only a few points higher success rate than others, and no one can completely determine what is inside the stone, whether it is a dead insect or a live insect. But today, an exception came in from this gambling shop. In Long Xian's eyes, those stones that cannot see progress naturally have no worms, while stones that can see progress naturally have worms inside. Moreover, the more digits after the decimal point, the better the quality of the stones. The good news from the entire gambling stone shop is just like what was given to him for free. Long Xian's mouth curved with a hint of smile, and he continued to cover his face, confidently stepping inside. This gambling stone shop is very large and divided into several large areas. Fossils with good looks and high insect infestation rates are concentrated in one area, and the selling price is very high. Fossils that are less attractive and more prone to dead insects are concentrated and stacked in another area, which has the largest land area, and the fossils in this area are also cheaper. There are also the most people gathered in this area, and the mentality of everyone is to be greedy for small gains and pick up big leaks. They pick up fossils, knock and touch them, study them carefully for most of the time, and eventually suffer from selection dilemma. Therefore, although there are many people here, transactions are not frequent. The stones vary in size, with small ones as small as fists and large ones as high as 4 meters. They are displayed in the middle of the courtyard and are known as the King of Stones. A group of people gather around them, touching and marveling at this fossil. Of course, the price of this stone king is naturally the highest in the entire market, and no one dares to buy it, and few can afford it. It has been kept there, and although there are many onlookers, no one has made a move. Long Xian was also surprised by this stone king. How afraid this spirit insect was of death, how could it form such a thick stone coat? Such a thick stone coat must have frozen to death, and no one would have frozen to death. I believe the insect infestation rate of this stone king will be very high. Long Xian subconsciously activated the ability of the golden finger, and as expected, the progress displayed in the middle of the stone king was 82.68732%. Good guy, there are a full 5 digits after the decimal point, which means that the one hidden inside may be a top-grade spirit insect with a maturity period of over 10,000 years, and the top-grade spirit insect is a necessary material for refining top-grade Gu insects. Long Xian's eyes lit up immediately, and his heart was pounding uncontrollably. Chapter 9. Stone King. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 10. Brainstorming. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Have you seen those people pondering with paper and pens? You see how much they trust the Qian Chamber of Commerce. Qian Duo pointed his chubby fingers in one direction. Long Xianshan hoped to go, and indeed there was a group of people holding paper and pens, sitting on the steps or fossils, frowning and pondering one by one, or scratching their ears and cheeks in a hurry, as if they were crazy, and they didn't know how many brain cells they had killed. Without that intelligence, don't waste your brain cells. Intelligence is innate and cannot be forced. Seeing so many people planning to bid, Long Xian finally believed Qian Duo's words and felt relieved. If it comes to imagination, who in this world can match him? If he dares to be second in this world, no one dares to be first, even in the world where his imagination exploded in his past life, he claims to be first. Class. Long Xian was full of confidence and excitedly took out a pen and paper, preparing for a brainstorming session to win the championship in one fell swoop. Looking at Long Xian's excited expression, Qian Duo chuckled inwardly and was deceived by him to succeed. Young people nowadays are really easy to deceive, and there is no such thing as wasting pie in the world. He didn't tell a lie, and Honesty Gu does have an irresistible restraining ability. But he avoided the importance and deliberately did not mention the standards of money and gold. Qian Jinjin values the Stone King very much. In her opinion, this Stone King may produce top-quality Gu bug. Only by presenting her with the ability of the top-quality Gu bug, which is equivalent to its value, can she send the Stone King away without losing money. That is to say, her standard is to develop a top-quality Gu bug into a combat level comparable to that of a top-quality Gu bug. How can this be achieved? Even if God comes, it cannot be achieved. This is destined to be a task that no one can complete. No one can win the bid even if they come. She deliberately played with people there. She has never had the idea of sending the Stone King out, and her standards are not something that humans can accomplish. In the end, she will definitely kill him. Qian Duo once again lamented the cunning of the young lady, who was too cunning. She wasted everyone's intelligence without giving anything, which was like playing tricks on a white wolf. Unfortunately, it won't cause everyone's dissatisfaction, making them obediently give up their minds without realizing it. This move is absolutely amazing. Qian Duo showed a sly smile and saw Long Xian standing there pondering, saying, "This bidding has been for a total of a month, and unfortunately, you came. Today happens to be the last day, and it's less than an hour since the bidding ended. I hope you can come up with a good ability in such a short time." As the words fell, Qian Duo turned around and left, searching for his next goal. If the same words were to be repeated to more people, he would love more and more people to come and give their brains. At this moment, Long Xian's ears were not listening to external affairs, and he was experiencing an unprecedented brainstorm in his mind. His eyes were tightly closed, and the first thing he needed to make sure was not to deviate from the topic. The ability of the light insect is to control light, but not all abilities with light attributes can do it. So there's no need to think about abilities such as light speed kicking, light speed movement, and elemental transformation, as the light bug is impossible to accomplish. There are many abilities that can be derived from controlling light, and Long Xian's first thought was the flash bomb that could blind the human eye. This is the simplest usage. The reason why the human eye can see everything is because light shines on the surface of an object, which is reflected and refracted into the human eye. If the light is controlled to no longer reflect, the human eye will be in darkness and unable to see anything. So controlling the light is enough to develop the ability to make opponents lose their vision. If this ability continues to extend and controls the light shining on oneself to no longer reflect, does it have an additional ability to become invisible? If we control the light reflected by objects thousands of miles away to bend and enter our own eyes, can we see things from thousands of miles away? Isn't this the development of thousands of miles eyes? If the light shining on the surface is no longer reflected, it will be absorbed by the surface and eventually become hotter, forming a deadly high temperature that turns the entire Earth into a blazing furnace. This is already considered a forbidden move. If the reflection of light is artificially altered, will the reflected light enter the human eye and cause visual errors, such as enemies clearly on your left but visually visible enemies on your right? That kind of ability is really terrifying. Anyone who encounters such an opponent will have a headache. This is not the most terrifying thing. If the growth rate of the light insect is high enough, can it control the light in a region to no longer fall, turn this region into eternal night, and keep all the creatures in endless darkness? Isn't this the art of dark night walking? Long Xian's mind is uncontrollable and continues to diverge. Light can be dispersed into red, orange, yellow, green, indigo, blue, and purple. It can also decompose into ultraviolet, infrared, X-rays, Y-rays, and radio waves. Infrared radiation can accelerate human metabolism, promote blood circulation, relieve fatigue, reduce inflammation and pain, and also provide thermal imaging for night vision. Ultraviolet rays, X-rays, and Y-rays can cause a series of hazards to the human body, including cancer. Is it possible to extract all the harmful rays from the light and develop the ability to emit death rays? The effects of radio waves are countless. Long Xian's brain is about to explode. He quickly thought of developing attack power against light again. Not to mention laser. Let's talk about the principle of convex lens paper burning. Convex lenses have the function of refracting light, converging it at a point and generating the power to burn paper. However, modern technology cannot make two large convex lenses, and the converging light is limited, so the destructive force generated is naturally optional. But the light insect that can control the light is different. It can gather as much light as it wants without any tools. What terrifying destructive power does it produce when all the light from 100 miles around converges at one point? Long Xian couldn't imagine it at all. It is not an exaggeration to say that the attack power of this ability has no upper limit, because the light in this world is infinite. When the converging light has no upper limit, the destructive force generated will be infinite. Under this level of destructive attack, even lasers are far from being comparable, and there is no need to develop lasers. With so many brain holes, in terms of developing light system abilities, even the yellow ape is his younger brother in front of him. His brain holes are a dimensionality reduction blow in this world. He felt that he could easily draw out a few abilities to become a model king.